We end off our story with the Autobot base being basically prepared for everything. They're not holding anything back. Relics, weapons, full equipment, everything, right? The dragons and the rest of the newer additions like Dreadwing and stuff like that are all getting ready. And this is where Australian asks to speak to Balerion on the side. Sir, if this Omega Law can restore planets and even remake them, is it possible for us to restore our own kind, at least on Earth? To which Balerion thinks, and this is actually a very good proposition, getting their species back, getting their race up and running again to protect humanity from other threats. And he states that if it is possible, then we are to make peace with Lustria. It would be better if all three planets were at peace. To which Australian says he will do his best, sir. And what of everything else? To which this is where Balerion does say that there will likely be some concerns, some, I guess you could say, quells, if you will, with everything going on and with how everything is pretty much handled in general, that there will still be dragons that don't follow. But again, those who are grateful will likely, I guess you could say, see the benefit of having an alliance with the rest of Earth and, Cybertron and stuff like that. So he tells him that there was only one real or one genuine option here. Peace must be kept no matter what, no matter the cost, whether it even means we have to fight our own kind, which he reluctantly says he doesn't want to do. But again, everything has to be peaceful, for who knows what could happen in the future, who knows what could even happen now. Everything has to come full circle. And so, as Caesar and Australian both conclude their conversation, Optimus simply grabs the Star Saber and gives his own speech about how everyone has come a long way and how everyone here has pretty much changed for the better. Magic, science, dragon, Autobots, even Decepticon. And hopefully, this is where it all ends. We will take the Decepticon warship and we will claim their Omega Lock and do what needs to be done if necessary. So this is where everyone simply gets ready to basically just raid the Autobot, or raid the Decepticon warship, excuse me. And well, on the Decepticon warship, Breakdown and the troops are ready, saying that they've located the Autobot base from, Soundwave signal. But unfortunately, he's not responding. Shockwave doesn't care about that, however. He simply states that they're going to end this. And the Autobots end the rebellion, even end those dragons. However, this is where he sees something on the screen. And Breakdown simply states, sir, what's this exactly? To which this is where Shockwave simply states, this. This thing is actually this planet's Omega Lock. I know, funny, isn't it? You see, I've learned that the dragons on this planet have quite a substantial amount of power. But unfortunately, they went extinct due to their organic nature rather than their magical ones. The ones that you and Megatron have been facing have some Cybertronian origins as well. However, today we're going to end this, and once I'm done, I will restore this race and control them. Use them as my own army to conquer not only Cybertron, but any neighboring planet out there. So, my dear Breakdown, it is simply a matter of further adjustments, further explanation. And this is where Breakdown simply nods and states the troops are ultimately ready. And so this is where they actually get to their first location, that they want to test the cyber-forming matter, or the experimentation on, that being the World Scar. However, this doesn't turn out to be the plan that Shockwave had ultimately hoped for. You see, while, yes, the Autobots, or the Decepticons, know where the Autobot base is, they also know where they are, thanks to the efforts of Soundwave being, well, under their care. And this is where they are simply just waiting for them. And Balerion simply states, well, here we are. Autobots, dragons. Let's end this once and for all. And so, as the Autobots charge and stuff like that, he looks to Optimus. Want to try something cool? To which Optimus is like, what do you mean by that? To which Balerion simply turns into his more massive form and simply leans down with his neck. Hop on. To which Optimus actually laughs at this. To which he states, had he been a younger bot like Smokescreen, he would think this is the coolest thing in the world. To which Balerion is simply like, look, don't be such a buzzkill. Get on my back before I change my mind and throw you up there instead. And so, Optimus rides Balerion with the Starsaber, fire and cosmic energy, blasting and bombarding their foes, while the Wyverns take care of the aerial Vehicons as if they're nothing, along with the likes of Dreadwing and Depth Charge joining them. You see, this isn't a fight anymore. It's a slaughter. However, this is where they get blasted out of the air by the likes of Abominus. Now in his combiner form on the battlefield, this is where Depth Charge and, well, Dreadwing decide to coordinate their efforts on the Predacon combiner. However, they don't have the firepower to pierce its hide. However, two individuals, along with a set of others, do. That being Skylynx and Darksteel, who want nothing more than to get vengeance upon Predaking. They descend on Abominus, bombarding him with everything they have, and joined by the dragons as well. This is where it actually just turns the tide in their favor. Abominus is going to die, but again, it's not going to be an easy fight. So the Autobots are handling the ground forces of Vehicons and, handling Breakdown as well. However, this is where when Breakdown and Bulkhead clash, Breakdown wants nothing more than revenge. Revenge for Knockout, revenge for his partner. However, a couple things happen here. You see, as the fight does progress, Bulkhead gets the upper hand, and this is where Wheeljack joins in. And this is where they simply tag team Breakdown, beating him down, and, well, now he's on the ground just ranting, raving that he wants to kill them, wants to kill every Autobot for what they did to Knockout. However, this is where they all kind of just look at him and is like, he doesn't know. To which Breakdown's like, what? What don't I know? And this is where Bulkhead pretty much tells him, look, I understand you and me had our history, but I hate to break this to you, but Knockout was killed by Shockwave. To which they're like, what? No. He couldn't have. Lord Shockwave is a madman. He even killed Predaking, one of his own offspring, his own child, his own prized and perfect creation, because he had a choice breakdown. He wanted to make a choice. He wanted to be an equal partner. And yet, here you are, still alive, huh? Do you think the ends justify the means? Or is it simply just, waiting for the inevitable to happen? And so, Breakdown is completely, and I mean completely, in distraught. And so, he kind of just sits there as Wheeljack and Bulkhead go to help the other Autobots with Abominus. However, as the tide of battle looks like it's favoring Abominus just even a little, Breakdown decides to jump in, hammering Abominus the best he can here. However, ultimately, he does meet his end, but he actually goes out saving Bulkhead from a well-placed shot from Abominus, sacrificing himself and telling his partner Knockout that he'll be seeing him, or pretty much kind of saying into the air that, or pretty much kind of saying like to Knockout, he'll be seeing him very soon. And so goes offline as the Autobots continue to overwhelm Abominus, killing him. Back on the Decepticon warship, Arachnid managed to sneak Ratchet on board along with Intel Ka at this point. And this is where they actually do meet Shockwave, who simply states, despite everything that's going on, I am still in control. However, until Ka mocks him, saying that that's the first stage of denial, making it look like you're in control, you have everything all figured out. And to think you got this far, but didn't think of improving your soldiers, and only yourself. Even killing one of your most resourceful soldiers in Knockout, to which Shockwave simply states he will have all the soldiers he needs very soon, and turns into his Shia form. However, before this can happen, this is where Intel Ka simply states, go ahead and get to the control panel, that she'll handle this. And this is where she actually utilizes her webbing to integrate into the Decepticon warship. And actually, it's where a funny scene plays out. She actually starts utilizing the walls and the rooms around them to just simply beat up Shockwave for a good minute, right? And it's kind of funny because it's just like, she could probably convert the ship into an entire mech if she wants. But again, she really doesn't think that's a good idea with the Omega Lock. So she's kind of just like smacking him around, crushing him against walls, the ceiling, even the floor itself. Before Shockwave can retaliate, he's blasted by Optimus and Balerion in his much smaller form. And this is where they simply tell Shockwave he's got a chance to surrender. But then again, he's committed way too many atrocities. And Balerion states, as the guardian of this planet and of this people, you die here today. And tells Intel Ka to go ahead and do what they discussed earlier. To which Intel Ka simply utilizes the warship to simply drop her through the floor, and she skitters along to the Omega Lock. And this is where another battle ensues. Optimus and Balerion versus Zoshia Shockwave. A titanic clash, a masterful one at that. Both of them going blow for blow with Shockwave here. The two of them actually being able to tag team them. However, the fight gets way too out of control. It gets way too, in all honesty, I would probably say it gets way too, whatchamacallit, it gets way too, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll probably say out of control is the best one, because again, the amount of energy they're throwing around, the fact that Optimus and Balerion have to hold back while Shockwave is just not caring, even to the point where he starts to get a little bit of a sadistic cackle going from this, being able to literally ragdoll them if he gets close. However, the fight spills out into the Omega Lock itself, and this is where Shockwave actually states manual override, and actually begins to charge the Omega Lock. It's got this silver and orange like energy to it, and keep in mind the coloring is very different as it reflects Predaking. And this is where even Balerion sees the head of Predaking as just a simple piece. And this is where Zoshia, or Shockwave, excuse me, simply states, now you see what happened to those who chose to try and defy me, chose and try to be an equal instead of a servant. And this is where Ratchet simply states he's gone full mad. He's going to use the Omega Lock itself to simply fire at Earth. Not even a direct target. He's going to cyberform Earth and be done with it. And to which even Intel Ka simply states she can't hack the machine without some sort of feedback. She needs something to kind of disrupt it. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do what needs to be done. So Balerion simply like kind of flying in space at this point here, because again, I do think the warship would have gotten to this point here. And this is where Shockwave simply states, now the reign of Shockwave can begin. What's one dead planet compared to 1,000? Compared to 1,000,000 as long as I rule. And so this is where Balerion simply tells Optimus, thank you for everything. Optimus simply looks at him like, what do you mean? And so Balerion bites Optimus's leg and flings him right onto the deck of the warship and simply tells him he's got to do it. Kind of figured it would have ended like this, but hey, this always happens. So this is where he full-blown speed blitzes Shockwave and kind of maneuvers him into the blast. And Arachnid's like, no. What, beloved, what are you doing? To which Balerion states, these last couple months or years I've been with the Autobots, You've been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. But mark my words, I will find my way back to you, whether it be through the spark or physically. Either way, I'm gonna come back to you, one way or another. And this is where he does feel a sharp pain as Shockwave digs his claws into him, but he clamps his teeth right on Shockwave's head and flies him right into the, I guess you could say, the energy blast that's about to come. And this is where he begins to utilize his full magic, thanking both Merlin and Morgan for everything that they've done for him. And so when he flies into his blast, there's a huge explosion, and Shockwave is torn apart by the blast itself. The dragon element, the magical energy, all fusing together until there's nothing more than a large explosion. But again, it worked. It's everything that it needed. And Arachnid simply crashes down onto the, or I guess kneels on the ground and simply states, no, 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 no. And even Entel Ka can't even help but shed a tear for her leader, her friend, her family, sacrificing himself to, for the greater good even. But again, she even states it's what Balerion would have done in the end. And she tells Arachnid he's always been a dragon or a being of his word. So there's no possible way he wouldn't keep it. And so this is where we do get a montage of things happening. For starters, the Omega Lock, right, on Cybertron is used to simply restore Cybertron. The Omega Keys are simply used to restore Cybertron. Meanwhile, the Decepticons' Omega Lock is used to restore Earth's dragons itself. This does take some time for humanity to ultimately get used to, but again, they have a lot of history to learn and a lot of things to catch up on. Next off is, well, Australian. Australian does exactly what Balerion wanted him to do. Taking the likes of Depth Charge and Strong Arm with him, they actually do go to Lustria and go to its capital city. Not sure what I would call it. Maybe Draconia or Tiamat's capital. Either way, they do meet the Queen of Dragons herself, Tiamat. And when she's wondering why Balerion isn't here to basically do it himself, Australian explains everything. And ultimately, she does agree to, well, being able to make peace with Cybertron and Earth. However, they do have a bit of a population problem with other species on their planet. So they're wondering if Earth or Cybertron would be accustomed to taking them. To which Australian simply states, well, they have been working out a few things with the humans. What's a few other species added to the planet, right? And then we see Earth as it is now. It's a lot more lush, and a few areas are a bit more jungle-like than before. More islands, more land masses as well. Meaning that other populations like Tieflings and Githyanki's and some of the Kroxigors as well, now living on Earth. Bit of a complicated world in general, but there's also a couple things here. Dragons being restored. Dalamadors, Nergigantes, Malzenos, Valstrax, Shagaroos, and Gores. All of them being restored and now under the command of Australian, who pretty much builds a statue in Balerion's honor. They live a lot more civilized lives, and considering the fact that they've been restored with a little bit of Cybertronian properties as well, they have been ultimately, I guess you could honestly say, kind of cyberformed, if you will. They have a little bit of trace elements of Cybertronian within them, just like the main five themselves. And, well, back on Cybertron, the Predacon race is rebuilt, as promised, as I do think the Autobots would like to honor Balerion's wish of being able to restore the likes of the Predacon race. So this does mean Skylynx and Darksteel do lead the new Predacons in an age of peace with Cybertronians. Dreading himself is now the Decepticon leader, and now leads a much more peaceful, I guess you could say, and much more, I guess you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? Peaceful and more original way of the Decepticon cause. However, some things still aren't the same. Some of the people of Earth and stuff are still not really too trusting of the dragons. Maybe that'll play out in another story, but hey, I'll just leave that for another part, right? But this is where we kind of see where everything is going. Earth has its own issues. Lustria and Cybertron are peaceful, but again, the fight for peace never stops. There are a couple things that are going to happen. Unicron is still looking for a host body. Megatronus still has yet to rise. And more threats seem to be looming there, as even Tiamat can sense one of her oldest enemies returning. However, this is where we pretty much pan over to Cybertron, with them basically now fully rebuilt or now having regenerated everything thanks to the Omega Lock, and they're kind of wondering what's going to happen now. But this is where we actually see Arachnid and RC being the ones to talk. And she says, I didn't expect you to really turn good, or even be good in general. To which Arachnid does laugh at this and states, yeah, crazy what a dragon can do to somebody, right? And this is where RC states, or simply asks Arachnid, think he's out there? Think he's still alive? To which Arachnid simply states, yeah, he's tough. He's not invincible, but again, he's tough. Wherever he is, whether he's in the Allspark or maybe across some other dimension, who knows? She knows good and well he will find a way. He will come back, and they will be together once again. This isn't where we leave off here. We would go to another dimension, neighboring in all honesty. And, well, there's another Earth, but one that doesn't have Cybertronians. Quite interesting, but something's happening on the surface. A new calamity has emerged upon it, this being the King of Monsters himself. What's going on here? He's ripping a Celestial apart? Huh. Cosmic entity with unimaginable power. However, instead of just crushing it, he absorbs its power. Kind of like how Monster vs. Godzilla absorbed the nuclear energy from the power plants. And he then goes on to dismantle its defenders. The Crimson Witch, the Dark Cat Man over there. Oh, and a Sky Lady. I'm just joking with y'all. He goes to disassemble the Avengers and stuff like that. But even that's not enough. They can't stop him no matter what they do. So the God of Thunder tries his best shot, and he just gets sent into the atmosphere. Poor Thor, right? However, as Captain Marvel goes to get him, we then pan over to the open sea, where Balerion lays there, unconscious and simply tired. He's not affected by the water around him. And this is where someone is nudging him to wake up. And he opens his eyes to see Namor. Now, obviously, he doesn't know who he is, but this is where Namor simply asks, are you friend or foe? To which Balerion gets up, realizing he's underwater, but that he can breathe down here. Strange to him. But he simply looks at Namor and simply states, friend to those who are innocent and heroes alike, foe to those who would harm innocents. To which Namor simply states, very well, you are indeed an ally. However, there is something that drastically requires your attention. And this is where he opens the water, allowing Balerion to fly up. But this is where we see the same scene that plays out. Captain America asking Godzilla to leave and that humanity could be at peace. However, Godzilla ain't really about that life. He about to blast him with his atomic breath, but gets hit square in the chest and is sent flying by a massive stream of fire that does scorch his chest. And everyone looks up to see Balerion in his giant form descending upon the King of Monsters, telling him no innocents will die upon his watch. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And I'll see you guys for the epilogue to the next series.